Hello everyone and welcome to another Foul Original. This video was made in part thanks to the Foul Original people over on patreon.com/fouloriginal. Patreons get early access to all my videos ad-free before they go public on YouTube. More details will be at the end of the video. This week we take a road trip back to the start of the year 2013 for the outlaw motorcycle faction known as the Aces and Eights. The new year would bring new members to the group and a sense of accomplishment. An invitation to join them had just been extended to one of the TNA roster, and his decision would be shortly forthcoming. A business deal would go wrong for Roode, while going very well for the club. Meanwhile, an icon would return from injury and the vicious beatdown they received months ago to exact a measure of revenge. 2012 had seen the Aces and Eights establish themselves as credible threats to anyone and everyone in the promotion. 2013 would be no different, but with some hard knocks along the way. This is part 4 of the story of the Aces and Eights. That's gotta sting, Mr. Anderson. On the December 13th, 2012 episode of Impact, Bobby Roode would come out to the ring and ask why the Aces and Eights attacked him after he made an investment with them and paid them off. The Sergeant-at-Arms Devon alongside the Aces and Eights would answer Roode. Devon told Roode that this was business and that someone had come to the club and offered a better deal. Roode was furious and asked who outbid him. Devon said he would keep that business and name within the club, as he and Doc stood on the apron threatening him. Devon says that they may just get their answer later that night. They enter the ring, Devon holding a baseball bat alongside a towering Doc. Roode leaves the ring quickly. TNA World Heavyweight Champion Jeff Hardy and James Storm are at the top of the ramp, and Jeff has a mic and asks for no music. He said he doesn't care about who paid who, but he does care that they jumped him twice. He tells them that he's here for a fight, and he and Storm run down to the ring. They go straight for the TV champion Devon and Doc, who are standing in the ring. The TV champ and Director of Chaos are thrown out of the ring and caught by the other gang members at ringside. The Aces and Eights are not happy, and that would lead to a tag team match later that night. Later that same evening, the Aces and Eights would lose a tag team match against Jeff Hardy and James Storm. After the club's loss, Devon would grab a mic and reveal the name in the middle of the ring. He says the club don't want to fight other people's business. He revealed the name to be Austin Aries. Back at Bound for Glory 2012 on October 14th, 2012, Aries lost his title to Hardy, and he still hadn't got over it. It was Austin Aries who had paid for their services at Final Resolution 2012 to distract Roode and stop him from winning the title. This is why they then beat down Bobby Roode after that match. This gave Bobby motivation to interfere in Aries' rematch the following week on the December 20th, 2012 Championship Thursday edition of Impact Wrestling for the TNA Heavyweight Championship against Jeff Hardy. Jeff would win the match and retain the title thanks to Roode's interference on that night. While the battle for the world title raged on, the Aces and Eights would look to add a new member to their ranks. On December 27th, 2012, during an open fight night episode of Impact Wrestling, the Aces and Eights would offer Mr. Anderson the chance to join the faction. He wouldn't give his answer immediately, and speculation would run rampant as to his final answer. As mentioned on the last episode, Mr. Anderson had branded himself as a lone wolf of sorts. He called himself an asshole and signed a one-year deal with TNA in 2010. During this run, he would challenge for the TNA World Heavyweight title, but suffered some unfortunate injuries for real, most notably a severe concussion courtesy of a nasty chair shot to the back of the head from Jeff Hardy. This meant that for a lot of his first year in TNA, he hadn't managed to win the big one. He finally became TNA World Heavyweight Champion on January 9th, 2011 at the TNA Genesis pay-per-view, but lost it just 1 month later to Jeff Hardy in a ladder match on February 13th, 2011 at the Against All Odds pay-per-view. Mr. Anderson's second title run came when he joined the heel faction Immortal, led by Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, on June 12th, 2011 at the TNA Slammiversary pay-per-view. We'll talk more about the Immortal faction in a future series, but in short, Mr. Anderson wasn't truly loyal to anyone other than Mr. Anderson within the confines of TNA storylines. With that all said, it came as no surprise that Mr. Anderson would join the Aces and Eights when given the chance. On the January 3rd, 2013 episode of Impact Wrestling, the first official show of the year, Mr. Anderson would give his answer to the club. He was backstage in the clubhouse, sat on a couch with two club girls with a beer in his hand. Devon is laughing and asking if Anderson has an answer yet. Anderson says he was still unsure, but was a fan of their recruitment process. The director of Chaos, Doc, would get angry with Anderson and tell him that Sting is back tonight and they need to know his answer. Doc shouted at Anderson, asking if he's in or out. With that comment, Anderson says, if we do this, there needs to not be an ounce of fear of Sting, and hands Doc his ball-peen hammer. The Sergeant-at-Arms is overjoyed and says this is good, as it seems like Anderson has joined the Aces and Eights. Devon asks a prospect if he has seen Devon's baseball bat as they leave to find out what Sting has to offer. On paper at least, it seems as if Mr. Anderson had turned his back on his fellow TNA wrestlers and was now part of the Aces and Eights group. He told us for the longest time, but we didn't believe him. Mr. Anderson truly was spelled A-S-S-H-O-L-E. That wasn't all that happened on the first episode of Impact Wrestling in 2013. On that same January 3rd, 2013 episode of Impact, in the clubhouse, there was a heated debate between the Vice President, Doc, and the Sergeant-at-Arms. It was agreed that all the members who were still masked needed to guard their masks with their lives. The Aces and Eights would be part of the main event in a tag team steel cage match. The Sergeant-at-Arms Devon and a masked member of the Aces and Eights would face off against Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. Angle and Joe were looking for revenge against the group for their constant attacks. The match would start off with Doc attacking Angle and locking Joe in the cage with Devon and the masked member of the Aces and Eights. Samoa Joe was also still furious over the loss of his TNA Television Championship to Devon in controversial fashion back on the December 6, 2012 episode of Impact and attacked both men. Back on the Open Fight Night episode of Impact Wrestling on December 27, 2012, Samoa Joe had faced off against a particular masked member of the group. He defeated him quickly and decisively as his rage was unbridled towards the Aces and Eights. Joe would even try to unmask him that night before the biker gang made the save. This same masked man would go on to be the other masked member of the Aces and Eights that would team up with Devon against Angle and Joe in this tag team steel cage match on January 3rd, 2013. Kurt Angle was locked out of the match, but would manage to get the keys to open the cage and get in to help Joe and even the odds. The match would go back and forth with both teams getting in some good offense. Ringside, the newest recruit to the Aces and Eights, Mr. Anderson, stood looking on into the cage, not yet wanting to get involved at all. They would pick up the pinfall win, and after the match ended, a whole heap of masked members of the Aces and Eights flooded the steel cage. They would interfere to lay the beat down on Angle and Joe, as the TNA wrestlers were now severely outnumbered. The odds looked stacked against Joe and Angle until we had the return of the icon Sting. Sting had been off TV after the savage beatdown from Doc with a ball-peen hammer back on the November 8th, 2012 episode of Impact. He was out for revenge and ready to take on the biker gang. He arrived with his trademark baseball bat and started teeing off on the Aces and Eights inside the steel cage. Taking out members of the group left and right allowed Angle and Joe to reveal the identity of another one of the masked members. Angle would finally unmask this member of the group in all of the mayhem. The tag team partner of Devon and the big man who wrestled in many of the previous matches in 2012, this man was known as Knox. Knox, later renamed to Knux, in the Aces and Eights storyline was known by most fans of the WWE branded reboot, lovingly referred to as WWE ECW from 2006 to 2010. He was then known as Mike Knox and was featured as the overprotective boyfriend of WWE ECW exhibitionist Kelly Kelly. His feud with CM Punk was the one most people would remember him for during his time there. During 2008 to 2010, he worked on the main roster of Raw and SmackDown. He was a perennial jobber in his final year in that company, but notably did compete at the WWE No Way Out pay-per-view in 2008 as a part of the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber match. He would go on to be released by the WWE in 2010. Knox had been signed with TNA since May 2012 and had been working under a mask since then for the group on TV. He had a pre-show untelevised dark tryout match with a pre-Aces and Eights TNA TV champion Devon in a losing effort back then. He would, however, impress TNA officials enough to warrant him getting a contract with the company. He had played a mass member of the group since that point and was involved in all of the beatdowns and attacks they carried out throughout 2012. He had been the tag team partner of Devon in many of the matches the Aces and Eights fought in 2012. It is also of note that he was the masked member of the group who teamed with Devon against Bully Ray and Sting back at Bound for Glory on October 14th, 2012. That match would give the Aces and Eights legitimate access to the Impact Zone without being stopped by security. Devon had been unmasked in that match and became the Sergeant at Arms. This was the first time we would see the face of the other masked member in that match from long ago. The rest of the gang tried to hide his face, but it's too late. Another member of the Aces and Eights had been unmasked. At the TNA Genesis pay-per-view on January 13th, 2013, we would see Aces and Eights in 3 different matches throughout the night. New member Mr. Anderson would defeat Samoa Joe as he embraced his new Aces and Eights allegiance. TNA television champion, the Sergeant at Arms Devon, would face off against Joseph Park in a non-title match. Devon would win this match against Park. The Director of Chaos Doc would come up short against the Icon Sting in a losing effort. The Aces and Eights were 2-1 at the pay-per-view against TNA, and they weren't showing signs of slowing down yet. With Genesis 2013 over, there would be some happy news within the promotion, as while all of the Aces and Eights story had been developing in 2012, a romance had been blossoming between 2 unlikely people. The January 17th, 2013 episode of Impact would extend a cordial invitation to the world, to the wedding of Bully Ray and Brooke Hogan. But before the happy couple could say "I do," we would get an unexpected WTF moment from someone who lived FTW. But that's all we have for this time. Quick question. Were you shocked by Mr. Anderson joining, or the reveal of Knox? Join us next time for the Aces and Eights Part 5, The Wedding of Bully Ray and Brooke Hogan. This video was first available to all my Patreons 24 hours before it went live on YouTube ad-free. A special thank you to all my current Patreons, their names will be on the screen right now. If you would like to support this video and future series, then please go to patreon.com/FoulOriginal and become a FOP. Tiers start from $1 and they go towards getting more of these out to you. Like the video if you did, subscribe if you would, hit the bell notification if you please, and share this video if you can. This has been a Foul Original. Thanks for watching. See you next time.